What is up, everyone? Today we take a look and a listen to my track which I've released my last single, Ostrich Nominalism, by my project No Ostriches. I'm going to do a mix rundown because many of you have been asking, what do you use for your mixing and stuff? What do you do? So today we're going to take a look, not too super in depth, but I'm going to show you the most important things: drums, guitars, and bass. How I mix those, what plugins I use, and yeah. So let's get cracking right away. What I wanted to talk about first with you is DAW preparation. Prepare your DAW. Make templates. Make presets. Label your tracks, color your tracks, sort the tracks, so you have a good overview over your tracks, you don't get lost, and you just have an easy workflow. If you have an easy workflow, the mixing is going to be so much easier and so much quicker. It's absolutely unbelievable. I've been mixing, in crappy setup DAWs for years, until I finally have now my templates, and I basically start recording or start writing a song in a pre-mixed template. So basically what I can do is just turn all the plugins on, mastering chain on, and check the final result almost immediately. So if you have your mix and you're not going to change the drum plugin, bass plugin, or amp sim, whatever, you basically always have your mix 95% ready. I really want you to prepare your DAWs. Make yourself templates. You will thank me later. So as you can see, everything is nicely labeled, laid out. MIDI things up here, guitars, and then extra stuff down here. Also, I wanted to talk about routing. So let's take the guitars, for example. This is the right guitar. There's nothing on the track itself. I am routing it to a guitar bus, which you do by clicking here, and then you can route it whatever you want. It doesn't do anything to the track. It just sends it to another channel. I am collecting both rhythm guitars and the two clean guitars in this single track here, and do all the mixing here. This is not only better for overview, it also saves CPU of your computer, because you only apply one cab, one EQ, one multipressor, and another EQ, instead of doing this 4 times on 4 tracks, Yeah, so much for that. It's going to be a long video, I'm really sorry, but now, drums. Let's start with the drums. I am using Perfect drums, as you can see. Just by the way, the preset will be available on Patreon. So I have my kit here, which I'm loading, and everything is set the way I want. I'm using a bit of this effects feature here for the kick and the snare. So it is basically mixed in the plugin itself. You don't need necessarily to work on it, but I wanted to work on it because I wanted to tweak the sound just the way I wanted to have it in my mix. And for that, I'm going to show you the mixer here, and I am sending all the individual tracks to a multi-track layout, which means that I have these tracks here, which are in the plugin. If I press X on the keyboard, you can see all these tracks here. So this is the plus and minus to add. If you choose, let me show you this quickly. You can choose multi-output, and then you get this plus, and you add as many tracks as you want, and you send your individual stuff to those tracks. Yes, so much about that. Let me just show you how the drum sounds by its own. Okay, let's see what I've did there. Let's take a look at the kick. All right, let me quickly show you what I've done here. Let's turn this off. First, I have put a Equalizer by Isotope. This is Ozone 6, it's quite old. We're at Ozone 8 right now. I have this for ages. It still works, so why should I change it? Yes, let's listen to this EQ. As you can hear, I've took out quite a bit of mids and adjusted the clickiness here in this area and some of the boominess down here, because this usually gets in the way of your bass and snare. Something I don't really need. So next up we have the IVGI2 by Klanghelm, which is a free plugin. Free stuff is always nice. This is a barely noticeable difference. It just gives some microscopic saturation. Fattens it up a little bit. You know, mixing is not always having a change like night and day if you've just put one plugin on. It's all those little tweaks, and if you put everything together, then it's nice. Okay, after that I have another free plugin, also by Klanghelm, which is the MJUC Junior compressor to compress pretty much the shit out of this kick. Now this looks pretty drastic, but the noticeable difference is very, very small, but it keeps the kick tamed. So that's what you want to do. You want to tame the peaks. And if you do that on every single track, your life will be much easier in the end if you are leveling all the volumes of the tracks and if you are pushing the loudness in the master. I'm not fighting in the loudness war, but you want some loudness after all in the end. This bus 4 is something we take a look at later on. Let's listen to the snare and let's go to that quicker part here. So this is without any tweaking, just raw out of Perfect Drums. First up, we have a pretty crazy looking EQ here. So let me show you what that does. So what I've done here is I've cut quite some of the low end away because I don't need that. I just want that crisp mid hit of the snare. So as you can see, the snare usually hits at 200 hertz, and that's where I left it. There was a boominess here at 360 hertz that I took out. A cut like this, 5, is usually or probably a ring. Let's listen. So I've taken out the ring of the snare a bit. And then I added quite some brightness here. Sorry, just to brighten up the snare because I think it was a bit dark sounding. Next up, we have a very, very nice plugin, which is the analog channel Rm2 by Audio Assault, which I've got in a sale, I think for €5 or so. This is really nice to give some smack to your instrument. Really nice. As you can see, I've turned the treble quite up a bit to really give that high-end smack to the snare. Next up, we have a free plugin by Klanghelm. Again, really go check out Klanghelm. They have awesome free stuff on their website. So this is, again, very, very subtle, but it's just to tame those peaks that the snare is making, just to get it a bit more level. All right, so much for the snare. Last but not least, very importantly, we have a reverb, which is the space designer from Logic itself. I've turned off the reverb, sorry, in Perfect Drums because I like this better. So let's hear that. Now, it's quite bright sounding, but I think that it suits the mix quite well. If we take a listen at the entire drum sound, let's take it away. I think it's quite nice. It's a nice room sound, and the Space Designer gives you so many possibilities to add reverb. Yes, toms. Just a very, very quick look. As you can see, minor EQ adjustment here. Again, the RM2 just for some smack. I mean, I'm not using that many toms here, I think. Yeah, quite heavy in the bass still. I like that. I like to pan them quite far away, so it really have a stereo effect of the toms. Overheads, cymbals and stuff. I am sending those, as you can see, to bus 1, which is my overheads bus channel. So again, this is to save just plugins and not to multiply plugins. So what I'm doing here is, let's take a listen to just the overheads. So what I've done here is just take out some of the harshness of the cymbals. And next up we have a plugin which is the GEM EQ550 by Overlouds, which was free when they released it, so I quickly grabbed it because it's not quite cheap now if you buy it. It's a fantastic plugin which gives you fantastic harmonics, and I used that, as you can see, to cut some more low-end mids and to give some air in the high frequencies. So let's check that out. Again, very, very, very subtle move, but I think it improves the overall sound. Yes, so the overheads are being sent into the drum out, where you have the entire drums output, which is something I really recommend doing, because if you want to adjust the overall drum level later on in the mastering stage or so, setting your levels, your life will be so much easier if you can just have, you know, turn up or down the drums with one single fader. Yes, so much for the drums. By the way, I forgot to mention that I have one plugin on the master, which is the maximizer, just so we have some level to listen to this stuff. Yeah, it shouldn't color anything too much. All right, let's take a next look to, let's talk about the bass. Yes, bass is being recorded DI through my interface, and this is what the final result sounds like. And as you can see, I haven't told anyone, but I've bought the Darkglass Ultra plugin when I mixed this song. I tried it out and it was so nice. It just makes the bass fit so well in the mix that I've spent those 115 euros really well spent. So again, this plugin, this preset will be available on my Patreon. This is just the Darkglass. Okay, next up we have again an EQ. Some drastic moves here, took out most of the boominess here, and I've cut the high frequencies because you really, really don't need those. Next up, something very, very interesting, something that is the first time that I've tried it myself, and it works really, really nicely. This is the VC76 by Native Instruments, which I've got years ago. I can't even remember. Let's get back to the kick and to this bus send here. I'm sending basically a copy of the kick to this dead end here. As you can see, no output selected. I'm just sending it here and it stays there. When I'm mixing the bass, I am telling this compressor to use this bus as the sidechain. I have sidechain engaged here. So what this does, and this is the magic of mixing, every time the kick hits, it's being sent to that bus. The bass's compressor sees that or hears that and thinks, oh, I have to compress the bass. every time the kick hits, so both are not getting in the way of each other. And this is a trick which I should have done years ago, but I've only done it for this song for the first time, and it's just brilliant. So let me show you what it does. As you can hear, both are just doing their things and not being like, oh, I want that low end, and no, I want it. It is so nice. So last but not least, on the bass channel, I have another compressor, the MJUCR Junior, just to get the bass overall level again. Probably very subtle. Just to level things out. The guitars. So there's quite some things happening on the guitar channel. Let me show you the guitars mixed. Alright, what's going on here? So let's turn this off. How did I record this? This is my PRS recorded through the captor. I used overlouds to put an IR on this, and I'm using the first one of the Gandhi cabs, this one, which brilliant cab sim. I'm using it for all the guitar sounds, and it's being slightly mixed already in overloud because I'm taming the upper frequencies a bit, and I have this slight room reverb happening on the guitars just to give them more liveness and a bit more realism. Next up we have, oh, by the way, so let's listen to how this sounds. Pretty drastic. Now I've recorded this with too much bass set on my PRS, but it's not that big of a deal. So this is what's happening in the first EQ. Yes, we have two EQs. So let's take a listen. So a lot is happening here, and because this is a guitar rated channel, let's take a bit of a closer look to this EQ here. Now I'm cutting off here. I'm high passing at 100 Hz. You don't need that shit below that. Absolutely don't need that. Then next up, I am getting rid of this boominess probably right here. As you can hear, when there's palm muting going on, there's a boominess that pops up, and I don't want that. Here we have probably a similar thing going on. Now, how do you mix guitars like this? It's really nice if you push it up the limits and absolutely crank the gain out of this and listen to weird frequencies. And here you can hear this. And this is something that is always there, but you are just amplifying it here. And then you can localize it and, reduce it. Then we have here in the mid some minor adjustments going on. This is the perfect example why you do surgical cuts and how you find frequencies that you absolutely don't need or don't want. You just go through the frequency band with the gain cranked, pretty narrow boost here. And if you find something like that, just cut it out. The thing is, if you just hear the guitar raw, you just think it's super nice. If you then start cutting and listen back, you think, how can I enjoy this guitar with this many nasty frequencies in it? Let me just mute just the band 4 for you. Was the wrong note, but it's somewhere there. Probably the same thing going on here. Band. Again, same thing. Then I think the most important cut for guitars is around 3 to 4K. This is where the most harshness sits, and it really makes a difference if you go and take care of those frequencies. So let me show you that. It really rounds off the harsh high end. Don't do that too much. I think it's best to have a source tone which doesn't have that many of those frequencies. So if you can avoid it before even EQing the guitar, that's ideal. But because if you overdo this, it will sound unnatural and just dead. The thing is, I experienced that guitar sims tend to create much more nasty frequencies in that range than a real amplifier does. That's kind of a problem. And I think Overloud does this very, very nicely. I think that I feel like the neural DSP stuff is having an EQ in that range already, and that's why they fit so well in the mix. But yeah, generally I think a bad amp sim will show in that area how bad it is. Yes, and last but not least, we have a low pass here at 11.4 kilohertz, because we can listen to that as well. If you just have the guitars like this, if you are jamming, that's completely fine to have this air. But if you are mixing, you don't need that, because the cymbals will need that space to have this air, you know? That was the first EQ. Then we have a multipressor. What I'm doing with this multipressor, I am just using it for this section right here to, you know, up to 160 hertz, something like that. And that is to tame the low-end boominess that happens if you palm mute. So let me just quickly find a section on the song. Take a look at what happens with the compression when there's palm muting going on with guitar. This is, again, very, very, very subtle, but every time I do a little, you know, there's a peak in low-end boominess coming up, and this just takes care of that boominess, which is happening very fast. Last but not least, we have another crazy looking EQ, but I don't know, I just figured that I need to even take more care of those frequencies again. And the thing is, I really like the Ozone Equalizer, but it only has 8 bands that you can work with. It is better than the built-in channel EQ of Logic, because that one has 1, 2, 3, 4 bands only, and the other 4 are just dedicated to a wide cut like this or a pass filter. I hate this EQ, also because it's so, you know, plus 30 dB. Who the fuck is boosting plus or minus 30 dB? Yeah, I'm stopping. So if you can get another plugin than the Logic EQ, or maybe the new Logic has better EQ, but I don't know. I'm using Isotope. I'm very happy with that. So let's listen to the final EQ on the guitars and not a difference. So again, there is still some harshness in there that we're going to take out. We're really going to polish those guitars. Again, this depends on the style that you are playing. If you are recording some really raw sounding music, you want that raw sound, then you don't have to do this. But if you are looking for a really modern, polished metal mix, you have to do this. You have to be tedious, especially with the guitars. High gain guitars produce so much shit that you don't want. I have a theory that plugins like Neural DSP stuff have stuff like this going on already in the plugin, And that's why they are sounding so good, and you don't have to do almost anything to them so that they fit in the mix. You know, I'm not, you know, accusing them. It's really nice that they do that for you. So again, I was just looking for individual frequencies here. I just took them out and made another low and high pass. Yeah, so much for that. These are the guitars, and that is already pretty much it. The rest is, you know, the same principles apply. Get the shit out what you don't need. Tame your peaks, get some smackiness into there, and you should be good to go. Now the clean guitars are running through the exact same channel than the rhythm guitars. I just figured, you know, it sounds good like this. I don't need to EQ them separately. Quick look at a solo. Yes, this was recorded with THU completely. Yes, and I did a bit less mega things because I wanted to keep that solo more natural sounding. This is what it sounds like. It's always impressive to hear a track like this soloed because it sounds so small and thin, but that's all you need. You're getting all the frequencies that you need to hear the music, because if you put everything on again, it sounds fine, because the rhythm guitars, the bass, the kick, they all take care of the fatness. You know, you don't need the fatness in the solo. Okay, we have 7 minutes left for mastering. Yes, let's talk quickly about mastering. So as you can see here, this is my mastering chain. I am using a lot of the iZotope plugins because they are just so handy, and I'm not a mastering engineer. Mastering is something that you usually get trained for, especially just for mastering. First in the chain, we have the saturation knob by Softube, which is a free plugin, and it's really nice because it gives you more, it gives more harmonics. It fills up the space that you might have cut out by EQing all the stuff. So let's take a listen. I'll turn the maximizer on again. So as you can hear, it gives quite a bump in loudness already, which is medium desirable, I would say. But it's a good plugin. So yes, next up we have the dynamic EQ. This is really nice. It works a bit like the multipressor that I showed you on the guitars. If it recognizes certain waves, big waves of frequencies, it gets them sorted. So just microscopic adjustments here. It's not really worth talking about, but let's see if we can hear a difference. Yeah, minimal. Next up, we have the dynamics, which is again compression, and you can compress different sections of the EQ, of the frequency band individually. So yes, probably I use the modern dynamics preset, just using presets here really. So because they do the job. Again, starts getting louder, so we are getting there. Next up, I have the exciter. Again, smooth high end. I used a preset here. This is just to get some, some liveness again to your mix. You can do that for a spectrum individually. There you heard, if I turn it up extremely, what it does. It gives more, more life. The imager, yes. This is something you have to be very careful with. This is just to give some stereo spread to your frequency band. I use it in a very subtle way. I don't even use it for bass frequencies, as you can see. This is handy for like transitions of guitars where you just have one guitar on one side. For example, this transition here. Let me show you that. Now, if you are listening to this on speakers, there's probably no difference, but if you have headphones, there's a difference there. So next up, we have again the JEM EQ550. I'm just using that to, you know, just the final touch, give some air to the high end and stuff, you know. Yeah, then we're pretty much there. Now, it may be that the levels are not quite as they were when I mixed it, because I had to raise everything, so it's a bit louder for you to listen to. But this is pretty much how I've done it. What you can see here as a last plugin in the chain is the Bob Perry audio listener, which is very handy to check your mix. I use this to put my mix into mono and then see how the loudness of the kick snare is, because that's when it really shows if the snare is too loud. Let me show this quickly. So you listen to this and you're like, yeah, the snare is like really, but then you listen to it in mono. And you just notice this song is just snare. You can also listen to the sides and so on and so on. Yeah, so there's a trick to do this in Logic. You just go to the gain and then mono. And there you go. I don't even know why I have a separate plugin just for this, because I can't do it in Logic. This has probably been a very, very, very long video, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you could learn a bit. Now, it was maybe quite a bit of a rush through everything, but I wanted to give you an overview of the stuff that I do. Keep in mind, it's not really super complicated. You just have to know a bit what you're doing and what result you are going for. Yeah. I might make a sheet with some mixing tips that I'm going to put on Patreon, like a little cheat sheet if you want. So you can check that out as well. You know, like just main frequencies, what to cut, what not to cut, how to do stuff and stuff. Yes. So much for that. Thank you so much for watching. A big thanks as always goes to my Patreons. Thank you so much, guys. Head over to Patreon for all this stuff. And take care, stay healthy, and I will see you next time.